right, all right.
So much fun.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our service from the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence. I'm Laura Schroeder, and I'm a member of your worship committee and the Sunday tech team. It's wonderful to see you here this morning in the Great Hall and online. Thank you for everyone who is helping to make this service happen this morning. If you are new or returning after a time away, we're glad to see you. Feel free to fill out a blue welcome card, which you can put in the offering plate later in the service. There's also an online version that you'll find through the link in the chat. We'll put you on our email list so you can receive information about all that we do. We strive to be a congregation that welcomes people of all ages, races, religious beliefs, backgrounds, sexual orientations, gender identities, and abilities. We belong to the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, and we are guided and inspired by its values and principles. Our values and principles during the service. We stream our services on Zoom and YouTube, and there is a camera in the balcony that looks down on the Great Hall and shows people's heads from the back. If you choose the last 4 or 5 rows, you will not be on camera. You are also invited to the session for those who are new to the congregation, which will meet in the parlor starting at 11:15. It is an opportunity to meet and get to know other members of the congregation as well as other newcomers, and to learn a bit more about us. A light lunch will be provided. We're here to celebrate, to reflect, and to support one another. It is good to be together. And now we'll begin our service.
We come to this time and place to rediscover the wondrous gift of religious community, to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and full heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and hope, and to rekindle the vision of an earth made fair with all her people one. If there's anyone on Zoom this morning who notices that someone who's usually there, who you would expect to be there, is missing, you might send them an email to let them know that the link on our website now works. We had a problem with the button on the homepage earlier, and it was taking you to the order of meeting, which is nice, but it doesn't get you into the service. So that's been fixed. And so if you notice somebody who you think is missing, you might want to just send them a quick email and let them know that the link now works. And now I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our chalice lighting. The words are in the order of meeting and on the screen. Our chalice is a reminder that in hard times, our ancestors in faith acted with courage. We light it today as a reminder of who we are called to be in a world that needs our strength and our commitment. And now our hymn for this month is, Where Do We Come From? What Are We? Where Are We Going? And we've debated how to do this because it is around, but I think for this Sunday, this is a change, Ellen. We're just going to sing it through twice all together. And next week, we'll try it in a different way, maybe in a round. Two times. We'll sing it. We'll sing with the repeats. Yeah. So every line we sing twice, and we'll sing that through twice.
Good morning. If anybody wants to come up and sit on this stage or in the front row, you are welcome to come a little closer for the pictures, although they will also be projected on the screen. And our story this morning is Cornelius by Leo Leone. I'm curious if anybody recognizes this book. I didn't realize until Janet chose this that Cornelius is a Great you, and maybe an ancestor of our congregation.
That's a plug. She's helping me.
When the eggs hatched, the little crocodiles crawled out onto the riverbank, but Cornelius walked out upright. As he grew taller and stronger, he rarely came down on all fours. He saw things no other crocodile had ever seen before. "I can see far beyond the bushes," he said. But the others said, "What's so good about that?" "I can see the fish from above," Cornelius said. "So what?" said the others, annoyed. So if you were Cornelius, I wonder what you might do in this case. He decides, on one day, Cornelius got angry and decided to walk away. It was not long before he met a monkey. "I can walk upright," Cornelius said proudly, "and I can see things far away." I guess the monkey's sort of a you too. "I can stand on my head," said the monkey, "and hang from my tail." Cornelius was amazed. Could I learn to do that? So instead of saying, "So what?" he wanted to learn more. "Of course," replied the monkey. "All you need is a lot of hard work and a little help." And they set about to do it. Cornelius worked hard. He worked hard at learning the monkey's tricks, and the monkey seemed happy to help him. When he had finally learned to stand on his head and hang from his tail, Cornelius walked proudly back to the riverbank. "Look," he said, "I can stand on my head." Any guesses what the other crocodiles said? "So what?" was the chorus. "And I can hang from my tail," said Cornelius. But the others just frowned and repeated. Disappointed and angry, Cornelius decided to go back to the monkey. Seemed like a better community to be part of. But just as he had turned around, he looked back. And what did he see? There the others were, falling all over themselves, trying to stand on their heads and hang from their tails. Cornelius smiled. Life on the river beach would never be the same again.
And now it's time for us to greet one another. Please rise and say hello to everybody who's on Zoom back there, and then turn and greet the people around you.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Apologies if anyone was frustrated trying to get on the service this morning. I'm not sure what happened, but Jessica fixed it. It's good to see you all. Hello, Jane. Nice to see you. Hello, Molly. Thanks for your help this morning. Hi, Eric. Hello, Evelyn and Gail. Hi, Janet. Sorry about our mix-up with the meditation on Tuesday. Hello, Teresa. Stephen. Good to see you. Hi, Sally. Karen, who was there? Emily. Naomi, good to see you. Violet, Tom. Oh, nice to see you. I'm Maribel. Hello, Mr. Hayes. Rich, miss you. David, nice to see you too. It's always fun to see that people who are here. I don't know how many people are here this morning. I think about a third of us come on Zoom every week, which is wonderful. So grateful to everybody joining us. Ready to move on. Now it's time for everyone who is leaving for religious education activities. So our theme this month is heritage, and we're talking about different aspects of heritage. And as many of you know, this congregation has two direct forebearers. One is the Free Congregational Society of Florence, which was founded in 1863, and the other is what was originally called, was originally called the Second Congregational Society in Northampton Unitarian. And that was organized on February 22nd of 1825 by a small group of people who had been members of First Church, but were uncomfortable with its theology. So, and this reading comes from the founder's plaque of the Northampton congregation, which is on the vestibule on the wall between the two doors. And they wrote, "We, disciples of Jesus Christ, having a firm belief in his religion, do hereby engage to walk together as a Christian church in the faith and order of the gospel." And then it says, "In necessarias unitas, in non necessarias liberalitas, in omnibus caritas." My Latin is not very good. Which means, in necessary things, unity; in non-necessary things, freedom; in all things, compassion. And then we have, from the founding articles of the Free Congregational Society of Florence of 1863, that was founded in part by some of the people who had been part of the 1840s utopian community in Florence. And that plaque is on our back wall right there. They said, "Respecting in each other and in all the right of intellect and conscience to be free, and holding it to be the duty of everyone to keep his mind and heart at all times open to receive the truth and follow its guidance, we set up no theological condition of membership, and neither demand nor expect uniformity of doctrinal belief, asking only unity of purpose to seek and accept the right and true, and an honest aim and effort to make these the rule of life." And it goes on, "And recognizing the brotherhood of the human race and the equality of human rights, we make no distinction as to the conditions and rights of membership in this society on account of sex or color or nationality," which was pretty radical for 1863. So the Florence congregation had their own songs, and eventually, I should have brought that, we have a copy of it, we don't have the original. Eventually they used a homegrown hymnal, which was called the Cosmian Hymn Book, a collection of original and selected hymns for liberal and ethical societies, for schools and the home, which was compiled in 1888 by a man named Lemuel K. Washburn. So I looked through both our current hymnal and that one to try to find a hymn that uses the same tune. And the only one I could only find one tune in the Cosmian hymn book that also uses 19th century hymns and tunes that we use all the time. So this one is Duke Street, that's the name of the tune. It was written in the 1700s, and it's used in two of the hymns in our current hymnal, and I'm sure it was sung in the 19th century. So what we're going to do now is we're going to sing the first two verses of The Ladder of Life, which is from the Cosmian hymn book. And the words to that one come from a poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the actual title of the poem is St. Augustine's Ladder of Life.
But Mr. Washburn apparently changed the first line of the poem to eliminate the word saint. And then we're going to sing the first two verses of hymn number 35, Unto Thy Temple, Lord, We Come. That one was written by a 19th century Unitarian named Robert Collier, who was a Methodist minister who immigrated from Yorkshire and converted to Unitarianism in the 1850s. So just for fun, we can pretend that on a Sunday in the late 1800s, both of our founding congregations sang the same tune, two very different words. You want to play that? Maybe play the whole tune through once. I think, yeah, the words are on the back. You have to flip in the middle because we're going to sing both verses of Ladder of Life, and then we're going to sing both verses of Unto Thy Temple, Lord. You probably know the tune. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing. You can decide which you like better.
Good morning. I'm Harriet Diamond, and I'm doing the Social Justice Minute for the Climate Action Group and for our capital campaign. So, wow, we've made enough in our capital campaign, $120,000 to retire our gas-burning furnaces. Hooray is in order, but not yabba dabba do. Because there is one more important piece that we can achieve if we all throw ourselves into this by giving what we can. We should and must replace our gas-fired range in the kitchen and our gas hot water heater with electrical devices. Indeed, it may be mandated by the town or the state in time. Our gas stove and our gas hot water heater use a substantial amount of fossil fuel, But replacing these devices is not inexpensive as we move to electrically efficient devices. A good, reliable induction range with a stove top and ovens will cost in the vicinity of $15,000, and an electric hot water heater will cost about $2,500. The induction range will ultimately save us money in energy costs over a conventional electric range. This, along with the heat pumps, will bring us into the 200th year in a fully fossil fuel-free building. Yabba dabba do. But on beyond yabba dabba do, well, there is something that goes along with decarbonization, and with full congregational support, we may be able to give this project a boost. We need to stabilize and protect our beautiful stained glass windows. The project would involve sill repair and then installing acrylic shields on the windows' exteriors. This would protect them from exterior threats, and it would result in improvement to the Great Hall's insulation. I hope we will all give to our decarbonization project. When we feel the heat in the winter and the cool in summer, and we're cooking in a clean, new way, then we'll feel comfortable, happy, and I think a little bit proud. Thank you for your generosity. Pledge cards are at the back of the hall, and links for donation are in the Sunday Times in the chat.
Thank you, Harriet. It's wonderful news. It's a wonderful success, and if we can get the windows, get progress made towards the window project, that would be really, really fabulous too. Our generosity in so many ways, fiscal and emotional, and with our hands and hearts, makes everything we do possible. And our contributions on Sunday mornings also help us support organizations and movements in the greater community. Half of the proceeds of each week's offering go to support our operating budget, and the other half goes to organizations that members of the congregation choose and are voted on, selected based on nominations made by the congregation at 2 coordinating council meetings each year. And the first one is tomorrow night. So we will make the choices then for what organizations will support between now and January. You can mail in a check, you can donate online, you can put your contribution in one of the plates that the ushers will now pass. Our offering will now be given and very gratefully received. Our meditation this morning comes from Sheila Krosky. She calls it Surrounded by Mystery. We are surrounded by mystery, but not darkness. Uncertainty, but not defeat. We are surrounded by love, for which we may reach out in time of need, and which we may give to those who need us. Let's take a moment together in silence.
When the world seemed lost and torn, more than we can bear, we find strength to carry on, turning from despair. Join together, be afraid, fear and lies will cease. As we struggle day by day, we seek love and peace. This day has challenged us to make good trouble, to make good trouble, to make good trouble. This day has challenged us to make good trouble, to make this world a better place. Marching forth and bound with love, walk this way of life. Joined together we have come to banish hate and strife. Make some noise and spread the word, change is on its way. Hope is here, we're challenged now, night has turned to day. Has challenged us to make good trouble, Stay has challenged us to make good trouble, to make good trouble. Stay has challenged us to make this world a better place, to make this world a better place, to make this world a better place.
So this brief history of both congregations was written by Rich West, who was going to be here to read it for us this morning, but Rich is unfortunately under the weather, so I'm sorry he couldn't join us. The Second Congregational Society of Northampton, Unitarian, was organized by 43 Northampton residents, including many of the most prominent, on February 22nd of 1825. And this was a time when, as was written by the daughter of two of the founders, the cloud of Calvinism enwrapped the whole valley of the Connecticut in spiritual gloom. It was part of a movement that represented a break in the grip of the old Puritans that they had established in 1654 when First Church was founded, and I assume when the town of Northampton was founded. The cornerstone of the building for the Second Congregational Society was laid on May 25th, 1825, and that building burned down in 1903, but the cornerstone remains. The Articles of Agreement that established the Free Congregational Society of Florence, which is what we read earlier, the part of it we read earlier, were signed on May 3rd of 1863, and that society continued the vision of the 1840s utopian community, which was called the Northampton Association for Education and Industry. And that was an extraordinary experiment in radical social change, inspired by other utopian communities. And it attracted intellectual activists from around New England and New York and Connecticut as well. The Florence Society brought to the city outstanding thinkers of the time, beginning with the resident speaker, Charles Burleigh. Burleigh was an abolitionist and a staunch supporter of independent thinking. His talks touched on all phases of questions pertaining to human welfare, social reform, and the extension of knowledge. And two of that society's members were wealthy entrepreneurs, Lilly and Hill, who, in addition to giving money for schools and the town library, the Lilly Library in Florence, financed the building of a huge meeting house called Cosmian Hall in 1874. Its meeting space accommodated up to 750 people. And it sits where the Florence, if you know where the Florence Farmers Market happens, that is where Cosmian Hall was situated. Almost all the prominent liberals and radicals of the 19th century spoke at Cosmian Hall at some point. These included Sojourner Truth, who had previously been a member of the utopian community. Frederick Douglass spoke there, and Susan B. Anthony. Louisa May Alcott's father, Bronson Alcott, considered himself a member, although he lived in Concord and then in Boston. In the late 19th century, the Florence Society was the largest free-thinking congregation in the world. And the Northampton Church Society was always more conservative than the Florence organization. It was smaller in the 19th century, and both societies continued with memberships and fortunes rising and falling over the years. And by the Second World War, their combined number of active members was about 50. Which was an all-time low. So in 1944, the Second Congregational Society of Northampton and the Free Congregational Society of Florence voted to join together as the Unitarian Church of Northampton and Florence. And although each of the two organizations continued to meet as legal entities, so you can think about that for a while, They had one minister and Sunday services were held in Northampton. And in 1972, so almost 30 years later, the name was changed to the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence. And in 1975, which was 30 years later, the incorporation was completed. So I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 145, As Tranquil Streams That Meet and Merge. As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free. Free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thought and lifeless greed. Free from a social call that fails to serve the cause of human need. The freedom that reveres the past, a trust, a dawning future more, and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic church, your future waits, your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free. It works beautifully, that hymn, but has nothing to do with the merger of the Florence Free Congregational Society and the Second Congregational Church of Northampton. That hymn was written in 1935 to celebrate the increasing collaboration between Unitarians and Universalists. I don't remember if that's when they did things like they combined their presses. I think the first thing they did was combine the presses, and then they combined the youth programs. And finally, in the late 1950s, they decided to get serious. And the merger between the Universalist Association and the Unitarian Association was completed in 1961, actually formally completed. So this congregation's heritage is multiple and varied. We don't have a Universalist thread. The Florence Society at its founding was too radical to be affiliated with any broader religious group. And in fact, early on, they did explore associating with the Unitarians, and they were invited to send delegates in 1865 to the Unitarian Convention. It's kind of like the forerunner to the UUA General Assembly, the National Unitarian Convention in New York City. And there, both Charles Burley and Bronson Alcott, who went as a representative, were rudely treated by some of the more conservative clergy who were present. And on their return, this is a resolution that the society passed. They said that the dishonorable, arrogant, and unchristian conduct of certain members of the late Unitarian Convention, exhibited in low blackguardism toward the delegates which this society had sent, show how difficult it is for a man to be a priest and at the same time a tolerant, enlarged, and magnanimous soul. So they remained unaffiliated. until many, many years later in the beginning of the 20th century, when they started to seek financial help. They became financially troubled, and they sought financial help and also ministerial supply from the Unitarians, and that's when they signed on to actually formally associate with them. So they were very two different characters, those two forebear congregations. The downtown one was much more conventional, connected to the city's elite. The other was radical out there on the western frontier, the western fringe. And one characteristic they did hold in common was that both depended on just a few wealthy members to support most of the budget. And particularly in Florence, Hill and Lilly pretty much funded the whole operation. And so when they died, they just did not have a base of support. So both congregations were really at a low point in the 1940s, and in both assets and in membership, when they decided to join together. And 44 men and women signed the membership book, the one that we still have today, that those of you who have signed the book have signed, is the same book that goes back to 1944. There were 44 of them, of the two congregations. So the question is, what did we inherit from them? Aside from an impulse to change the words of hymns when we don't like them, which is one that we share, right, with Unitarian Universalists, all Unitarian Universalists, it seems. What might have been the impact of merging the two congregations with very different identities and histories? So family systems theory, which some of you who are psychologists know something about, looks at patterns in families. And I got this from a consultant and coach named Kimberly Fosu. She said there are so many names for it: generational patterns, generational cycles, generational legacies, generational curses, if you're being extreme, but they all mean the same thing. A generational pattern is a belief, a perspective, a behavior, a lifestyle, action, or attitude that's passed down from generation to generation. It's things an ancestor believed, practiced, or did that still have an effect on the younger generation. They are patterns from a family history that are passed down from person to person through learned behavior, sometimes explicitly and sometimes not. So family systems theory in the 20th century has also been lately, in the last, 20, 30 years, has been applied to organizations. Religious communities, which are not families, nonetheless develop patterns of behavior that can be passed down from generation to generation. So there's a church in the Boston area that's one of the oldest of the many First Parish churches across New England, and they will be celebrating their 400th anniversary not too many years after we celebrate our 200th. The members there, some of them can tell you the name of the ship that the church founders sailed on, as well as the names of the people who sailed on that ship, the names of its most important and prominent ministers through the centuries. And there's another earlier history that takes a while for people to tell. A few years after that church was founded, there was a major dispute that became so contentious that the congregation split, and the dissenting group literally left town, lock, stock, and barrel. They left, taking the church's founding documents with them. And I don't know what happened to the silver. So those dissenters settled along the Connecticut River, the Connecticut River Valley, and they formed a new First Parish church in Connecticut. But to this day, they claim to be the founding congregation of the church in the Boston area. And I've preached in that Hartford church a couple times, including my pre-candidating sermon for this congregation, which some of you were. Anybody here from that search committee? Maybe not. Oh, Sarah, of course. So I preached there, and I met a descendant of members of the Connecticut First Parish, which is not Hartford, and she had participated several years before that in a reenactment of the journey by foot from Greater Boston to the church in Connecticut. So, what do you think family systems theory would say about these people? They would probably venture a guess that the history of the schism still has an impact. The Massachusetts church, when I knew it, was a place with factions and major disagreements and power struggles. And so you wonder, was that a pattern that they inherited 400 years later, almost 400 years later? Kimberly Fosu wrote, a generational pattern is a belief, perspective, lifestyle, action, or attitude passed down from generation to generation, one that affects the descendants of whoever first adopted or practiced it. So maybe a congregation is especially introspective or especially outgoing, has a habitual way of either sharing leadership or not sharing leadership. You can think of lots of examples. And it's very hard to understand, to see, and then understand the dynamics of a system when you're part of it, which is why people go for individual and family therapy. And it's also why organizational consultants are able to make a living doing organizational consulting. And it's part of the reason that our history can be so interesting to explore. So I'm really curious, and I hadn't thought of this before, but I'm curious what went on behind the scenes before and after the formal combining of the Florence and Northampton congregations back in the 1940s. Why did it take them 30 years to actually officially merge? And what kinds of conversations happened among the 44 people who ended up signing the book? Did anyone walk away? How were they feeling? Were there compromises made there? And were there any lasting impacts? It's something to think about, and particularly in the light of celebrating the 200th anniversary in 1825. So Jessica was trying to help me this morning, but you might be wondering what the story of Cornelius the alligator has to do with any of this. Feel free to come up with something. Let me know. I think he was kind of a genetic sport, right? He was born knowing how to walk on his two hind legs and born with a spirit, somebody who has a different vision, who is open to new ideas and is willing to make change when the old ways don't work anymore. Somebody who likes to make good trouble. So members of the Florence congregation were widely known as free thinkers, and although the members of the Northampton congregation were more conservative, both organizations were born out of a conviction that their members had a right to their own way of thinking and belief. In necessary things, unity. In non-necessary things, freedom. In all things, compassion. I wish they'd translated that Latin on their plaque instead of putting it in Latin. So we forget. I think we forget that part of it. So last week, members of our 200th anniversary celebration team sponsored this year's community gathering and conversation groups, and the weather was particularly uncooperative, but I think from what I heard, the conversations were lively and enthusiastic, and people shared ideas about how we might mark and celebrate the founding of the Northampton congregation, and about embarking on a project to envision the next stage in our history. And I want, again, to let you know that anyone is invited to the session for those new to the congregation, which will meet in the parlor starting around 11:15. It is an opportunity to meet and get to know other members of the congregation, as well as other newcomers, and to learn a bit more about us. So you don't have to have signed up. You can just come. And there will be a light lunch offered. So I'm going to end with words from the Reverend Priscilla Murdoch, who was ordained by the Wakefield UU Church in Eastern Massachusetts in 1985 at age 54, and served in churches across the US, primarily as an interim. She ended her career in Palmer, not far from here, in 2008. And a few years before her death in 2018, this is what she wrote. We live in the shadow of a world unsure of itself, of plans for peace lost in the plague of ambition, of a planet under threat. And yet we have cause to be hopeful. Our forebears have given us an example of perseverance in the face of uncertainties, of hope in the face of difficulties. Our hope lies not in the inner strength that our religion teaches us to nurture, but also in the example of those who went before to show us the way. May it be so. And our final hymn is another one from the 19th century, or close, or with a ethos of the 19th century. And we're going to sing it today in honor of the merger of our two forebear congregations. It's number 287 in the gray hymnal, Faith of the Larger Liberty. These words are from Marjorie Leeming. Let us go forth into the world through a door of hope for the future, remembering these words by Martin Luther. Even if I knew that tomorrow the world would go to pieces, I would still plant my apple tree. Go in peace.